Chapter 1, Part 1, One Dark Night. Hyuga Compound. 10:34 p.m. Hyuga Hinata stood in horror as she watched her cousin stand in front of the elders. It seemed like the entire Hyuga head family was there to see his punishment. For the 6-year-old girl, the whole thing was overwhelming. She remembered the first time she saw the cage bird seal activate when she was 3. It had frightened her so much that sometimes, she would still have nightmares about it. It wasn't like Neji had really done anything wrong, Hinata found herself thinking. He had only forgotten to address her as Hinata-sama. But it seemed that the elders would take any excuse to remind the branch family of what the head family was capable of. Neji stood defiantly in front of the elders, headed by Hyuga Hiyashi, Hinata's father. His white eyes displayed only one emotion, hatred. "You know the punishment for insubordination," Hiyashi was saying coldly, "and you have seen it before." Hinata's stomach clenched. Neji's eyes found Hinata's and held them. She could feel the malice in his gaze, yet for some reason, she wasn't able to return it. Her father would have told her she was weak, he would have been angry that she looked at him with sadness, but it was impossible for her not to. Neji was the closest thing Hinata had to a brother, and strangely enough, he was the only one who truly understood the emotions she felt. That was why she couldn't hate him, because he had felt the hopeless, frustrated anger that she had all her life. The anger that sometimes reduced Hinata to tears when she was alone after a training session had gone badly. He was probably the only one who had known her feelings when she had been shuffled aside in favor of Hanabi, who now stood at her father's side with an unreadable face. She looked sadly at Neji, wishing that she wasn't such a failure. Maybe if she was strong, like she was supposed to be, she could stop this madness. "Have you anything to say before the seal activates?" Hiyashi asked. "I have nothing to say to you, murderer." Neji spat. Hiyashi's eyes narrowed, and Neji crumpled to the ground screaming and twitching. Hinata felt bile rising in her throat. This was just like the time when she was 3, and she had watched Neji's father writhing on the ground in pain. She felt hot tears coming to her eyes as she watched. Hinata didn't have to look around to know that the looks on the others' faces were cold, hard, and completely uncaring. Her hands clenched into fists and she turned her head away. Hinata knew she was weak, and she knew that she should feel satisfaction that her cousin was getting punished for his insubordination. She knew that Hanabi would never have felt the way that she did, and her father would look down on her further if she tried to stop him. She was too weak to be a true member of the head family. She remained in Branded simply because she would be more useless as a branch family member. She would be too weak to accept that way of life any more than the one she had been born into. But was it so bad to be weak? The thought sprang up in Hinata's mind before she could repress it. Was it so bad to be compassionate? Was it so wrong to be kind? "No," Hinata whispered, so quietly that no one heard it, "I can't believe it is." She remembered when, before her father had given up on her, she had been asked a question in her training. "What would you do with power?" Hinata had been unable to answer that question, but Hanabi, who had been there at the time, had piped up that she would crush everyone who was her enemy. Her father had seemed pleased with the younger sibling's remark, and angry at his oldest daughter's thoughtful silence. What would you do with power? Now the question had come back to her. Before, Hinata hadn't known what to think. She hadn't been allowed to have her own opinions, but she had never been able to simply parrot her father's thoughts. All she had felt was confusion and a frustrated feeling that churned in her stomach. Now, the words seemed to have more weight than they had even had then. As she looked at her cousin, who was starting to twitch slightly, her answer came. "I would stop this. I would change the Hyuga clan. I would help people who needed it." The world stopped. Hinata felt a gentle warmth in her eyes and closed them for a moment. When she opened them, the whole room looked different. She had activated the Byakugan before, and this was similar, but something about it was completely different. Hinata could not only see the chakra system of her family as well as nearly everything around her. She could see a stream of chakra that her father was forcing into Neji's seal as well as the chakra that it was forcing itself into his brain. She could also see that the seal was only a physical sign of where an invisible layer of chakra remained. It was strange how she hadn't seen that before. Hinata wasn't even thinking as she walked forwards. She didn't even notice the looks of surprise and shock that she was receiving from her family. Hinata felt almost like she was watching other person as she calmly touched the stream of chakra. At her touch, the charca dispersed, and Neji stopped twitching. Hinata turned to her cousin and knelt down in front of him. Carefully, she traced the seal on his forehead with her finger. As she touched it, the seal vanished, and the layer of chakra began to disappear as well. "What are you doing?" Hiyashi Hyuga's voice seemed weaker than before. Hinata looked up at her father, not really understanding why he was looking at her with such shock and fear. Healing him, Hinata said, "The seal is bad. It's killing him." "What did you do?" one of the Hyuga cried out. I took it off," Hinata said. "I don't want to see him hurt anymore." The silence in the room was complete until Hiyashi stepped forward. "You are not my daughter," he spat. "You have not only created a perversion of the family's Byakugan, but you have broken our most sacred tradition. You're fortunate I don't kill you where you stand, but I see that you are too weak to be a threat. Get out of my sight. Since you care so much for the boy, he shall accompany you in banishment. I have no use for a coward who cannot understand his position. You are both forbidden to bear the name Hyuga, and should I or anyone see you near the Hyuga complex, we will kill you. You have until midnight to gather to leave." Hinata stood trembling at the words of the man who had been her father. Tears sprang into her eyes as her sight returned to normal. She sat there, in shock while the rest of her former family left one by one, occasionally casting glances her way. A touch at her elbow brought Hinata back to her senses. She looked around to see Neji, awake, shockingly, and looking at her with an emotion that she didn't recognize. "Why?" was all he said, but his voice lacked the usual hatred. I couldn't stand to see it anymore," Hinata mumbled. I wanted to stop it. Neji shakily stood up and helped Hinata stand. It was the beginning of a new world. Uchiha District 10:39 p.m. Uchiha Sasuke was not a happy boy. It wasn't fair that everything he did was either ignored or belittled or told some story about something Itachi had done when he was Sasuke's age. It wasn't that he hated his older brother. It was impossible to hate the one person who acknowledged his existence, but he was so tired of having to compete with him. His mother and father barely seemed to know that they had another son. Every conversation was about Itachi. Itachi's missions, Itachi's successes, Itachi. Sasuke sat on his bed and listened to the mumbles of the conversation from down the hall. His parents had given him something to eat early and sent him to his room while they entertained their guests. Sasuke was old enough to sit with company. Itachi had been shown off to guests since he had been 3, why was Sasuke pushed off into a corner all the time? Itachi was still out on his Anbu duties, and even if he were there, he would have just been roped into a conversation with their parents and guests. Sasuke stood up and looked out the window. Rage coursed through him as he heard the sound of the conversation down the hall. He had often eavesdropped on the conversations, and heard what they said about him. "Don't you have another son, Uchiha-san?" "Yes, but he is of no importance." That had been said last night, and even now the words hurt as much as they had when they were said. Sasuke's anger was reaching its peak as he made his final decision. "If you don't want me," Sasuke muttered, "if I'm that unimportant, so insignificant, then I won't trouble you anymore." The action was mostly out of anger and desperation to be noticed. There was malice in it as well, and a desire to hurt his parents, but he hadn't thought out all the reasons. It was an act of passion, but it was carried out in a completely emotionless way. Sasuke began to pack his weapons, some clothes, and money into a small backpack. He didn't have any plans yet on where he was going or what he was going to do, but he knew one thing. Uchiha Sasuke was running away. Unknown to him, there was a young man in Anbu uniform that was watching him slip out the window. "Foolish Otuto, what are you doing?" It was the beginning of a new life. Root Base, 10:22 p.m. Sai had been taught well. Technically, his name wasn't even Sai. That was just a name that, privately, he liked the sound of, and he had read that people needed to have names. He had chosen Sai on a whim, and no matter what, he had gotten into the habit of thinking of himself as Sai. It was as simple as that. In all other regards, Sai was a near-perfect example of a root ninja. He never showed his emotions or thoughts about anything, and this time was no exception. He had returned from a mission only to be told that his brother was dead from the illness he had had for a while. Sai had accepted the news without a flinch, and had been allowed to return to his room. Sai's room was as practical as it was possible to be. The only things other than the blank white walls were a bed and a small desk. Sai sat down at his desk quietly. For some reason the death of his brother made a strange feeling rise up in his chest. He took out the small picture book that he had with him. It was an unfinished gift to his brother, but now he wasn't sure what he had been about to draw into the final page. It was strange, he had never really had that much time with his brother, and technically, he wasn't really his brother, just another ninja who had been kind to him. The two of them were always separately training. Yet, somehow for all his root training, Sai could feel a strange hollowness in his stomach that had nothing to do with hunger. He couldn't help the image of his brother that appeared before his eyes, or the dull feeling that Sai would never see him again. Sai had never questioned anything that he was told before, but now, something was stirring in him. He had never thought anything against Danzo, but now, thoughts were rising up, and one was the most defined. It's his fault. Sai stared at the wall in total silence, then stood up. He needed to clear his head. He would take a walk. It was the beginning of a new way of thinking. Kohona Playground. 10:42 p.m. Uzumaki Naruto liked to go to the playground after dark. For one thing, it was kind of fun to play at night, since there was a forbidden element to it. For another thing, he didn't have to feel left out when there was no one playing in groups. Naruto sat on one of the swings, and looked up at the sky. Actually, he was fairly content to be like this. In his opinion, it was useless to cry about being along all the time, and you really couldn't miss what you never had to begin with. Besides, when he became Hokage everything would change. Naruto smiled brightly at the thought. Yeah, I'll definitely become Hokage, he yelled for no reason. It was a habit of his. Naruto didn't like silence. He had lived in it way too long, so he would break, no shatter, silence if it became too oppressive. That was where his habit of randomly yelling things for no reason came from. There was nothing more to it. Something moved in some bushes to Naruto's right, and he jumped off the swing. It was probably just the local feudal lord's wife's cat again. That thing had a long history of running away. Maybe if Naruto caught it, he would be acknowledged as a full ninja and not have to bother with the academy anymore. Just in case it was something else, Naruto picked up a stick that was lying on the ground. He edged close to the bush and gently thrust the stick into the bush. "Come here, kitty," Naruto said in a sing-song voice, "I'm just gonna take you home." "Go away." Naruto stopped. The last time he had checked, cats didn't talk. Naruto had never been known to do anything that anyone asked of him, unless it was Iruka-sensei or Old Man Hokage, and he was curious. He poked through the bushes and blinked at the girl curled up in the bushes. "Hi," Naruto said cheerfully, "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm gonna be Hokage." The girl had short pink hair that was covering most of her face. One look at her told Naruto that she had been crying. She was hiccuping slightly, and the green eyes that looked up at him were red-rimmed and somewhat unfocused. She sniffled a little and wiped her eyes. Finally, she looked up at him with fear. "What's your name?" Naruto asked, with a huge smile that showed off the whisker-shaped marks on his cheeks in full glory. "Why are you crying? Did your parents forget to come get you? Do you have parents? Is your hair real, or did someone get food coloring in it?" I, the girl stuttered, "Leave me alone, please. I can't help my forehead being big." Naruto looked at her forehead with interest. It looked like a forehead. "It's not big," Naruto said, a little disappointed. He had been imagining a forehead the size of Hokage Mountain. "It's not," the girl said, sounding confused, "but everyone says so." "It's not big," Naruto said, nodding to confirm his statement. "I'm Haruno Sakura," Sakura said softly. Naruto was thrilled. He had never really have much of a conversation with anyone before. Mostly he just ran around and harassed the other kids until they let him into their game, but they didn't really like him that well. Naruto knew it, but hoped that he would eventually grow on them. Now, he was talking to another kid like it was normal. Sakura straightened up from her ball and smiled shyly at Naruto, who grinned back. The sound of someone talking softly brought both children out of whatever thoughts they were having. It sounded like someone their age, maybe a little older, and it was coming closer. After a while, Naruto could hear what the person was saying. "An apartment for the both of us. I'm not even sure if I'll be able to stay in the academy now. I never really asked who was paying for it." The voice was definitely male. I think that it's standardized. I once heard Fa Hiyashi-sama saying that it was a waste to spend money and time on children who will never be ninja, a soft, girl's voice said. She apparently had a bit of a stuttering problem. We'll have to speak to the Hokage. I know that he cannot intervene in clan matters, but he may able to help. Yeah, Naruto broke in loudly when he knew the two could hear him. The old man'll help you. He saw with interest that it was Hyuga Hinata, a shy girl he knew in the academy who always blushed when she saw him, and Hyuga Neji, a guy a year older than him that he didn't know much about. What are you doing out here, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked, looking like he was shocked by her bravery. Talking to Sakura-chan, Naruto said happily, already adding the familiar term to the girl's name. What about you? Hinata began. That's none of your concern, Neji said bluntly. Why do you need an apartment? Naruto asked. That's none of your concern, Neji repeated. You can use mine, Naruto said happily, it has lots of room. Hinata almost fainted at the idea. Neji looked somewhat shocked that some kid he had only sort of seen as a person had offered to let him share his apartment. What about your parents? Neji asked. Haven't got any. Neji looked somewhat surprised. Naruto-kun is an orphan, Neji-nisan. He lives on his own, Hinata whispered. Sakura was looking at Naruto with sadness. I live with my auntie, Sakura said. My mommy and daddy are always away on business. She said the word after a moment of thought, having to remember what her aunt said. There was a sound of pounding footsteps and a black-haired boy dashed into their midst and stopped, looking at the small group that had appeared with a bit of surprise. This was a very busy night at the playground. What are you doing here? The boy asked angrily. We could ask the same of you, Neji pointed out. Naruto recognized the newcomer as Uchiha Sasuke, a boy in his year at the academy. They had never spoken with one another, mostly because Sasuke was at the top of the class and Naruto was the dead last. Other than that, Naruto knew pretty much nothing about Sasuke, other than that he was a jerk with a ton of fangirls. That's none of your business, Sasuke spat. Everyone's saying that, Naruto whined. What are you doing here anyways? Neji asked, looking annoyed. I always hang out here at night, Naruto said in a tone that implied just how obvious he thought the fact was. Why? Sakura asked curiously, but when everyone looked at her, she made a small, meeping sound and took a few steps back. Why not? Naruto asked with a shrug, for the first time, looking a little more serious. No one really cares. The silence after that was so complete that everyone was able to hear the soft sound of someone walking slowly towards them. A boy about their age wandered into view. He had black hair and eyes, like Sasuke, but his hair was cut short, and there was something about him that was creepy. He was wearing a black ninja outfit, and he didn't seem to notice them. When he finally looked up and noticed the 5 children looking at him, he stopped and smiled. Hello. They all just sort of stared at him. Is it usual to meet here? The boy asked, looking at them like he really didn't know that a group of kids meeting in the dark was strange. I'm sorry if I've interrupted anything. No, just a stupid talk about what we're doing here, Naruto said. He smiled back in place. What are you doing here? I went for a walk, the boy said. A walk? Sasuke repeated, looking skeptical. The boy nodded with that somewhat irritating smile on his face. Even Naruto was looking skeptical now. He knew that most kids weren't allowed outside after sunset. In fact, this was the first time he had seen anyone out after dark. Naruto was many things, but a complete idiot was not one of them. He knew perfectly well that there was something wrong with that explanation. Either this guy didn't have parents or he was lying. Before Naruto could think of something clever to say, everyone stiffened as more footsteps and voices. This time they were the voices of 2 grown men. All 6 children looked at one another and plunged into the bushes. Naruto guessed for the same basic reason. They didn't want to get caught and in trouble for being out this late. Everyone knew that there was an unofficial curfew. I don't see why we couldn't have met in a more convenient location. The voice of the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi, reached them. I apologize for bringing you out here, Hokage-sama, but I did not wish to be eavesdropped on, a cold, curt voice said. Naruto noticed the boy who had just come stiffen. You know him? Naruto asked. Shish, came 4 responses. Even Hinata had shushed him. Danzo-sama, was all that the boy said. The speakers walked into full view. The first, an old man in long, white robes with a large hat, was the Hokage, a well-loved old man who had taken back his position when Fourth died during the attack of the Kyuubi. The other was a man that Naruto had never seen in his life. Half of his face and his arm were wrapped in bandages, yet there was something about him that made Naruto uneasy. Although he seemed harmless, he emanated something dangerous and somehow foul. Naruto didn't know how he knew this, but something told him that this man, Danzo, was a threat. "Well, we've come here," Sarutobi said, sounding somewhat tired. "What was so important to ask me to come to a playground at 10:30? "Hokage-sama, you are growing old," Danzo began. "I think I have 10 more years left in me," the old man said with a smile. "I don't think that is a good idea," Danzo said calmly. "As you grow old, the Leaf's enemies begin to see a weakness. Sooner or later, there will be an attack, and you are aging, and even the best ninja cannot defeat time. There will be an opponent that you cannot defeat. I know that we have been rivals for the position of Hokage for decades, and that our ideals differ, but I feel that it would be best if you considered a new candidate for Hokage. You wish for my abdication and for me to proclaim you my heir," Sarutobi said, his voice growing cold. "I feel that I am the only candidate," Danzo said calmly. "None of the young show the potential of the fourth, and I am the most powerful ninja in the village besides you. I also have the experience necessary for a leader." "I'm sorry, Danzo-san," Sarutobi said softly. "I can't consider that request at the moment. Things are too hectic in the village at the moment for there to be a change in power." "I see," Danzo said, and Naruto felt something, but before he could even think straight of what it was, he saw the Hokage stumble and fall on his back, blood shooting out of his mouth. "I told you that you would meet an opponent that you couldn't defeat," Danzo said softly, a small smile forming on his lips. "Such a pity. I even thought to give you a chance to live. You've grown weak and stupid in your old age, Sarutobi, to allow a man who had always been a rival and enemy to speak to you alone. Don't worry about your precious village. It will be far more powerful under me than you or the fourth could have dreamed. A pity really, that rock nins were capable of making it past the Anbu to assassinate you. I will be the only candidate in the war to avenge you." Calmly, like nothing at all had happened, Danzo walked over the body of the man that he had killed, and walked down the path, disappearing in a moment. Naruto's mind felt like it had frozen. Nothing was coming out straight. The old man couldn't be dead, he was unstoppable, he was Hokage. "Old man," Naruto whispered. The others stood in dead silence. "We're lucky to be alive," the strange voice said softly. Danzo-sama wasn't paying attention. We shouldn't be alive." "Old man," Naruto screamed, running over to the body of the old man, outside of Iruka-sensei, who had cared if he was alive. "Old man, please, wake up, you can't die, you're Hokage." Naruto didn't feel the other children run up behind him. He didn't hear the whispered warnings to be quiet. He truthfully couldn't have cared less if Danzo came back and killed them. All that mattered was that the man he thought of as a grandfather was dead. Tears coursed down his face as he sobbed. Slowly, the eyes of the Sandaime opened and took in the 6 faces looking at him. "You saw." They nodded. "Take these, you must leave, take them somewhere safe, don't let him have them," he gasped out, blood coming from his mouth. "Naruto, I proclaim you my heir, as it should have been, if the council hadn't forbade me become a Hokage like none before you." Slowly, the Hokage raised his hands and preformed a series of seals. There was a small pop, and a group of scrolls appeared before them. "These can't be found by Danzo, too powerful, take them somewhere safe, hold secrets, Uchiha, Hyuga, too dangerous, secret limits, Tenshi Byakugan, ceiling, keep them safe, stop, Danzo, Naruto, the Kyuubi, sealed, Naruto." Slowly the old man's eyes began to glaze over. Naruto shook him as hard as he could, but finally, he straightened up, his eyes dull. Finally, he became aware of his surroundings. Hinata was sobbing quietly into Neji while he supported her, looking shocked and frightened while unshed tears blurred his white eyes. Sasuke was staring with dull horror at the body. Sakura was sobbing loudly in fear and sorrow. "I want to go home," she gasped between sobs. "We can't go back," the newcomer said suddenly. "Danzo-sama will kill us if he knows about this, and eventually, he will know." "Why are you calling that filthy murderer Sama?" Naruto spat angrily, "Who the heck are you anyways?" "Sai," the boy said, "I'm a member of Root." "What?" Sasuke asked. "It's not important," Sai said, shaking his head, "we must leave right now. Danzo will kill us all." "Besides," Naruto said softly, looking at the pile of scrolls, "Old Man Hokage gave us an order. We have to take these out of here." "I'm not sure," Neji said, he was delirious. "How are we going to project those scrolls? We're just academy students." I think that," Hinata began, then she took a deep breath, we don't have a choice." Sakura sobbed out in fear. "Mommy and Daddy will lose their daughter anyways," Sasuke said bluntly, "either you run and live, or stay and die." "I don't care what you do, I'm gonna do what the old man told me," Naruto told them all. He said, "Get these safe, and I'm gonna do it as the future Hokage of Konoha. And then I'm gonna come back super strong and kill him and become Hokage." Naruto turned around, not looking behind him, gathered up the scrolls as well as he could and ran as fast as he could towards the gates. Sai followed him without a second thought. He was raised to be Danzo's tool, but he didn't want to die. Besides, Naruto reminded Sai of his brother, maybe it was a gift. Hinata paused for a moment and dashed after him. Her crush had changed to admiration. Neji followed his cousin, not wanting to lose the family that he had just gained. Sakura stood terrified, staring at the body and at the retreating figures. "I'm sorry, Mommy, Daddy, Auntie, I hope I'll be back soon, I don't want to die," she whispered as she followed the others. Sasuke stared at the others, not really wanting to follow the Dobi, since he knew that if he did follow it would be like assenting to his leadership. Finally, he decided that he didn't really want to be a leader anyways and that he was still more powerful than Naruto would ever be. Conflict resolved, Sasuke shot after them. It was the beginning of a legend. In the end, everyone held one scroll. The scrolls were huge, and everyone was surprised that Naruto could have held all of them for as long as he had. They all supposed that it had something to do with his excitement. The six crouched in the shadows of a building, watching the gate cautiously. They were planning to make a dash for freedom, but the Chunin guards didn't seem to be showing any signs of not paying attention. In fact, an Anbu had decided to drop by and was helping the two Chunin on watch. "This is just great," Sasuke muttered sarcastically. "Shut up," Neji hissed. "Did you hear something?" one of the Chunin asked the Anbu. There was a quick intake of 6 breaths. "No," the Anbu replied in a dull tone. Naruto let go of the air and shifted a little. There had to be a way to get around these guys. They just needed to think of one. Maybe he could try to distract them. He had never tried anything on the guards, but there was a good change that things wouldn't be too much different. They would chase him, and eventually lose him. Maybe he would have time to get out of Konoha before they got back. Just before he jumped up to do something that would have been considered either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, there was a sound of wheels approaching. The group turned to see a covered cart moving towards them. 2 men were moving it up to the gates, and they were stopping frequently. "This thing weighs a ton," the younger of the two complained. "Yeah," the other agreed, "tell you what, we're going to be traveling most of the night anyways, so let's get a drink before we leave to give us some energy." "Yeah," the first said enthusiastically. Both men moved the cart into a corner and wandered off to one of the nearby bars. Naruto knew that they were almost always open. Even the ramen shop that he always ate at would eventually close, but these things seemed to be open all the time. Vaguely, Naruto wondered just what these drinks that the adults had really were. He had more experience than most people with people who had too much of the drinks. The people who lived below him always seemed to be having them, and they did the strangest things. They would laugh, cry, hug one another, punch each other for no real reason and talk about their mothers. "Hey, I got an idea," Naruto announced. "What?" Sai asked. "Those guys are leaving Konoha, right?" Naruto asked. "Yes," Sasuke nodded. "They have a big cart that's covered, right?" Naruto asked. "Right." Neji had a small smirk as he saw where this was going. "Well," Naruto trailed off. "We could hide there," Hinata whispered. "Right," Naruto grinned. Slowly they crept towards the cart. Naruto was sure that the sound of his own heart was going to betray him to the guards. It was so loud. Or what if he sneezed, or one of the others sneezed? Naruto stumbled a little, but before he fell, Hinata had grabbed the back of his shirt. It seemed like an eternity before they made it to the cart, and even longer for them to all pile into it. Naruto realized quickly that it was going to be a long, uncomfortable trip. The cart was full of large, heavy-looking vessels. There was barely enough room for the 6 of them to squeeze together, and with the scrolls, if one of them moved so much as an elbow, all the others were going to have to move, and someone would probably end up on someone else's lap. The little group arranged itself as best they could in a circle with the scrolls in the center. No one dared to speak as the minutes dragged on. All of them were probably too afraid of being discovered, Naruto thought, since this really was the only change they were going to have to get away. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered just why everything was going so well. The whole thing had begun to have an unreal feel to it, like some sort of dream, but the words of Sai haunted him. "We shouldn't be alive." Naruto suppressed a shudder. After waiting in total silence for over an hour, the over-loud voices and somewhat dragging footsteps of the 2 men became audible. "Man, that was great." The younger man's voice was somewhat slurry. "Konoha sake is the best," the other proclaimed. "You said that about Kumo too," the first pointed out. "Did I? Yeah. Who cares?" There was a lurch as the cart began to move. Both men swore loudly about the weight and the children sat, frozen with fear. Evening, a new voice called, "What's your business?" Leaving, the older man said, "We know it's not policy to let us out at this time, but we're kind of behind schedule, and we need to get going, our boss is gonna kill us." "You're with that packing company, right?" The voice of the second Chunin asked. "Well, we've worked with you guys long enough to know that you're not up to anything. We'll just do the routine check and you can be on your way." "I'll do it," a calm, young voice said. "Probably the Anbu." Sasuke twitched somewhat. Naruto looked at him strangely, and noticed that his eyes were huge. The flap opened before Naruto could think of anything, and a uniformed man with a weasel mask was staring at them. All 6 stared back in horror. The Anbu made a quick hand sign and a scroll appeared in Sasuke's lap. There was no bang, or any other sound to give away the action. Sasuke stared at the man with a kind of wonder. "Good luck, Ototo." Naruto barely heard the whisper. "It's clear," the man said in a normal tone, "proceed." There was another lurch as the cart went back into motion. "Night, and good luck," one of the Chunin called. It was the beginning of new day. Uchiha Itachi walked quickly back to the Uchiha district. All in all, he felt rather proud of himself. He had no real love for his family other than his younger brother, and if Sasuke had finally gotten fed up with his treatment and run off with some friends, Itachi wasn't going to do a thing about it. Sasuke was the other member of the family who had even looked at him with love. The rest of his clan, including his parents, saw him simply as a tool to gain more power. Even his best friend, Shishui, sometimes looked at him with total jealousy. He would say nothing to his clan. Perhaps they would notice that a valuable scroll that contained copies of the Uchiha's signature moves had disappeared. They would notice that before noticing that Sasuke was gone. He turned a corner and was so caught in his own thoughts that he didn't see the figure of the man in the shadows. Uchiha Itachi. Itachi turned around. It was the beginning of a nightmare. Hyuga Hiyashi was not a cruel man. He loved his eldest daughter more than he would ever say. She reminded him so much of his dead wife with her gentle ways and quiet personality. It had broken his heart to disown her. Neji would take care of her. He assured himself. There was nothing better that Hinata could have done than remove the seal from her cousin. He was strong and dedicated. Once he had something to believe in, he would follow it until he died. The council would have never let her be the new head at any rate. They would have passed over her and chosen Hanabi, who was better at hiding her feelings and behaving as they thought a Hyuga should. If only he had the power that people thought he had. Hiyashi's thoughts were interrupted by the door flying open. Hiyashi-sama, a head family member, stood at the door, looking breathless. The Hokage is dead. What? Hiyashi's cold mask faded instantly. He's been found at the playground, assassinated. All signs are of rock nins. The council has called for an emergency meeting, but Danzo has already been nominated as the next Hokage. It was the beginning of terror. It was the beginning of Hakume. Chapter 2, Part 1, Child of Sand. A hard jolt from the cart woke Naruto from a scattered dream that he couldn't remember a second later. He was surprised that he had been able to fall asleep with everything that had happened. Just the thought of the murder of the Hokage made bile rise in Naruto's mouth. He looked around at the forms of the others. Sasuke had curled himself into a little ball on his side, but it looked somewhat painful since he had curled into Neji's feet. Neji had curled around with his back to Sasuke, but had a tendency to kick. Sakura was between Naruto and Sai. She had managed to fell asleep sitting up, and didn't notice that Sai's head was on her lap. Hinata was on Neji's other side, and she was sleeping on top of him. Naruto had managed to lean back in the cart without making a lot of noise. He was glad that none of them snored. Naruto still did not quite believe they had managed to pull it off. Every time the two men, who were named Daisuke and Shin, stopped for some reason, usually to complain, Naruto would start to get a feeling of terror in his stomach that someone had come after them. Nothing ever happened, and it seemed like they had escaped without anyone being the wiser. Daisuke and Shin had been traveling all night, and their stowaways had no time to speak. There were plenty of things that Naruto really wanted to ask, and from the looks that they were all given one another, especially to Sai, they all had questions that they wanted answered. Right now there was nothing that could be done. Naruto tried to ease himself into a comfortable position, but it was hard when Sakura moved and her elbow was crushing Naruto's side. It was then that he noticed that they weren't moving. Time to turn in for the night, Daisuke, the younger of the two, said with a loud yawn. More like turn in for the day, Shin pointed out. Naruto could tell that Daisuke had shrugged. Same difference. There was the sound of people moving around and setting something up. For about 10 minutes everything was silent. Naruto looked at the others again. Sasuke had opened his eyes and Sai was sitting up. The others looked like they were still asleep. The three stared at one another for 10 more minutes until they heard the grinding sound of someone snoring. Hinata's white eyes were opened and she looked around at the others. Neji, disturbed at the motion, twitched slightly and sat up. "Mommy," Sakura mumbled sleepily, "I had a bad dream." "No, you didn't," Sasuke contradicted. Sakura opened her eyes and stared at the faces around her. She looked like she was going to cry, but controlled herself. "Well," Neji said, "I guess it's time to answer some questions." "Yeah," Naruto agreed, "like who the heck is Danzo?" "And the Anbu who helped us," Hinata added. "And what we're going to do," Sasuke muttered. "First things first," Naruto said, turning to Sai, "who is Danzo?" "He is the leader of Root, a select branch of Anbu. He was the Sandaime Hokage's rival since before he was elected, and remained against his teachings." Sai repeated all the information in the well-practiced, yet impartial voice of someone reciting a lesson that they had learned by heart. He carefully selected people who were orphans or who had the correct mindset to teach them to be superior ninja. Also, he has a strict policy of secrecy. No one in Root knows everyone else in Root, making it impossible for potential spies to completely destroy the organization. He wishes to reform Konoha into a powerful nation that the world with respect and fear. Sasuke was looking at him with total suspicion. "So, what's to keep you from going back telling your boss just where we are when we're not looking?" he asked, his eyes narrowed. "It would be bad for me to do such a thing," Sai said, that strange smile on his face again. "Danzo-sama would kill me if he knew what I had seen, even if I turned you into him as well. I have no choice but to follow you." "Is your name really Sai?" Hinata asked suddenly. Naruto looked at her in surprise. Why would he lie about that? "No, I don't have a name," Sai replied, still with that smile, "but I would like it if you called me that. I read it in a book." All right," Hinata mumbled. There was a silence that was only broken by the sound of loud snores coming from outside. Neji looked over to Sasuke, his white eyes narrowed slightly. "Who was the Anbu, Uchiha?" he asked. "You definitely knew him." Sasuke looked somewhat annoyed at being called by his family name, but didn't say anything about it. Naruto guessed that there was some sort of rivalry between the Hyuga and Uchiha clans, and vaguely remembered hearing a young Uchiha grumbling to his friend about stupid clan one-upmanship at a restaurant before he was noticed and kicked out. He didn't really care all that much though. "My brother, Itachi," Sasuke said after a moment. "I don't know why he didn't report us though. He's been really quiet lately, and only been talking to Shisui and me." "Maybe he's fed up with the clan," Naruto suggested. "Why would he be?" Sasuke spat, "Everyone worships him." "Or maybe he just wanted to get rid of you," Neji muttered. "You could have replaced him." Sasuke laughed softly at that. A hard cold laugh that didn't suit someone his age. He sounded 10 years older. That would require my parents to notice that I exist, he whispered. After another drawn-out silence which no one knew what to say to break it, Naruto spoke up. So we know that this guy is your brother, he's really quiet, an Anbu, and he let us get out, but other than that, we don't know anything. There was a general assent. Now what do we do? Sakura asked, speaking up for the first time since she had woken. Split up when we reach a town, Sasuke suggested. That's stupid, Naruto muttered, we should stay together. There are more of us, so we'll be able to take care of each other. Sasuke's eyes flashed. Who died and made you the leader? The old man, Naruto shot back, but then quieted. Everyone was glaring at him for mentioning the Hokage, and even Naruto knew that he had gone too far. Sorry, Naruto said quietly, I'm not used to talking to people, I'm used to yelling things a lot, so I say things that maybe I shouldn't. What kind of an excuse is that? Neji asked, looking annoyed. Sasuke didn't join in, he was looking at Naruto strangely. Why? He asked. Naruto-kun lives alone, Hinata told Sasuke, like she had told Neji, I don't think that most of the adults like him very much. I've only seen Iruka-sensei and him ever treat him well. Sasuke blinked once. He had never really cared about the lives of other people, and the thought that someone else was suffering was a new thought to him. One he didn't really like. Why? Sakura asked. Her curiosity was obvious. He seems nice, I like him. Hinata flushed a deep crimson. Naruto shrugged, he was smiling again. It doesn't matter, we're all out, and I think we should stay together, he spoke like nothing had happened. I agree, Sai said, it would be better for us. Fine, Sasuke said, looking away. Sakura nodded. Neji didn't look too happy, but he noticed Hinata's hopeful look, and nodded his assent. So we're going to stay together, he muttered, and what? They all looked at each other. Find a place to hide the scrolls, Sakura suggested. I have a better idea, Sasuke said, his eyes on the scrolls, we have to learn to defend ourselves, so why not learn the jutsus? But we're just academy students, Hinata pointed out. Sasuke's right, Neji said, we're completely defenseless now. But, Hinata started. It's okay, Hinata-chan, Naruto said, not noticing the blush that accompanied his use of the honorific, we have to protect this stuff, but no one said anything about not learning it. Besides, how can we protect them if we can't fight? Alright, Hinata mumbled. Iruka Yumino was worried by 4:30. Although the Hokage had been assassinated, there had been class at the academy that day. Mostly because doing things like nothing was wrong would keep the populace from a general panic. Also, most of the adult civilians as well as the ninja, from Genin on up, had been summoned to a hearing. Parents wanted their children under the protection of Chunin in a time of crisis, particularly when they weren't around to protect them. Some weren't there like the Hyuga girl and boy in the Uchiha, but that was, Iruka assumed, because their parents didn't want it out of the house. Yet it wasn't the children he was worried about, or the meeting. It was a specific loud, blonde boy that had made him look at the clock every so often and bite his lip. He knew that Naruto would sometimes skip class for some reason, but he would always come and give some sort of excuse. Iruka didn't always know why Naruto really skipped, and sometimes he wondered if it had to do with some of the accidents that happened every so often around him. This time was different. Naruto was sometimes thoughtless, and like all very young ninja children seemed to think that he was invincible. Also, the Hokage was one of the few who was kind to the boy. It was completely in Naruto's character to run off and try to avenge the Hokage himself. The idea of Naruto hearing about the murder and running off only to be killed himself made Iruka forget what he was saying. Not like it really mattered. The students were mostly being allowed to play games while they waited for their parents. He had hated Naruto when he first arrived, only seeing him as the demon that had killed his parents, but as time had gone on, he had watched the horror that was Naruto's life. It would have been kinder if they had attacked him. It would have been better if they had flat out treated him like they wanted, because the determined refusal to see that he existed was even worse than hateful words and physical abuse. Naruto went through life ignored. People refused to see him. They acted like he simply didn't exist. Other than the very few who would try to hurt him by accident, Konoha had taken the Hokage's order of not speaking of what Naruto was, and changed it to pretending that there was no Naruto. Iruka had taken Naruto to that ramen shop the first time out of a morbid curiosity. He wanted to know just what the demon brat was really like. Naruto had hugged him so hard around the middle when Iruka invited him that the teacher was sure that he was going to pass out. At dinner Naruto had talking about everything. His dream to be Hokage, his wanting to learn new techniques, his being bored all the time at the lessons, his pranks, how much he couldn't wait to be a ninja and show everyone how wonderful he was, and be acknowledged. Things had become habit, and quickly, Iruka had realized just how wrong he had been. Naruto was many things, impetuous being one of the most notable, but he was no demon. He sighed and tried to force his attention somewhere else. There was a knock at the door and a tired, sick-looking man with heavy dark circles entered. "Hayate," Iruka said in surprise, "is the meeting over already?" Hayate shook his head and coughed a little, walking up so that only Iruka could hear him. "No, they're still talking about what's to be done. I'm here to tell you something else. I know that you care a lot for your students, so I thought that you should be informed. This last night a girl named Haruno Sakura didn't return home at dinner, and this morning there was a search for her. It seems that not only her but Uchiha Sasuke, Hyuga Neji, Hyuga Hinata, and Uzumaki Naruto have vanished. I went to Naruto's house personally. There is no sign of a struggle or of packing. Danzo-sama believes that they were kidnapped by the rock nin that assassinated the Sandame." Iruka didn't hear the rest of what Hayate was saying. He was too busy staring out the window and making the decision that for the second time in his life he was going to get so drunk he could barely stand. The trip was long. Naruto was ready to die of boredom by the second day. The schedule ran very simply. They would wake up, read the scroll that they had chosen, listen to Daisuke and Shin talk, complain, and wait until they went to sleep to talk. If someone had to, as Hinata put, use the toilet, they would have to hold it until the two went to sleep. It was risky, but miraculously, they hadn't been discovered. Food and water were not a problem. Apparently, Daisuke and Shin were part of a trading company that sent people to most of the hidden villages, and the vessels contained luxury items. Most of them had expensive-looking fruits and juices. After the first talk, the little group would talk not only about future plans but about themselves. They shared little things, their favorite foods, hobbies, and favorite animals. On the second day, Naruto got up the courage to ask why everyone had been out at the playground that night. Surprisingly, this time even Sasuke and Neji answered. Hinata and Neji had been disowned from their clan, Sasuke had run away, Sakura had been crying because all of the girls at the playground had made fun of her forehead and she lost track of time, Naruto was just there because he was bored, and Sai had wanted to clear his head after hearing about his brother's death and had walked in the right direction. Strangely enough, in 2 days, the beginnings of friendships were starting to be visible. Sasuke and Naruto, although they were polar opposites, were showing the signs of becoming best friends, and Sakura and Hinata were starting to put their heads together and whisper a lot. Sai and Neji started to tolerate one another, and they all were starting to accept each other without insults. The hushed fighting of the first night was not repeated. At first because they felt that they would have to work together to survive, and later because they were beginning to genuinely like one another. The landscape was starting to change rapidly from forest to field and from field to desert. Sai said that it looked like they were headed to Suna. Naruto had heard some people occasionally talking about the hidden sand. They were supposed to the allies of Konoha, but they were warlike and many people didn't trust them as far as they could throw them. He didn't know much more than that though. Naruto wished that he could have been able to watch the scenery a little more. He had never been out of Konoha and he felt like he was missing something. Still, he read his scroll and bottled up his feelings. The scroll of sealing was old and very complex. Strangely, Naruto seemed to have a talent for learning difficult techniques, while the simple ones that most children his age knew, like the simple Henja Bushin, escaped him. For some reason, the ideas of the scroll of seals just made sense to him. Naruto couldn't wait for a chance to see if he was able to use the techniques. It was afternoon on the 5th day when they pulled into Suna. Naruto and the others had just started to wonder what would happen when the cart was checked when they heard the sound of Daisuke's voice. "Here's the regular shipment," he sounded cheerful. "Yeah, you're Daisuke Ueda, right? Satoshi here thinks your sister and I was a real beauty," a guard said. He sounded like he was bored and wasn't really thinking about what he was saying. How would you know that? Daisuke's voice had become suspicious. The guard sounded a little panicky. Move along. The cart began to move again. I'm going to have a talk with Saya, Daisuke was muttering. Naruto and the others stared at each other in shocked joy. They had managed to escape capture twice. Their triumphs were starting to make Naruto a little overconfident. Obviously there was a higher deity up there who liked them. When the cart stopped and Daisuke and Shin wandered off for their first drink, the 6 children cautiously slipped out of the cart. Naruto got his first look at another hidden village. Suna was not at all like Konoha. The buildings were mostly a uniform tan color and the people mostly wore off-white robes. The sandstone buildings had a forbidding look and the clear sky seemed empty somehow, yet the shops and the noise of the people was the same as home. The group's Konoha clothes stood out vividly in the sea of browns and whites, yet few people looked at the little group as they passed. They were used to the children of wealthy merchants milling around without supervision, and these children seemed no different than most. What should we do now? Sakura asked, looking around at the buildings. I don't know, Naruto admitted. Has anyone been here before? There was a small chorus of no's, and Neji began to look thoughtful. Maybe we should split up for now and see if we can find somewhere to stay, he suggested. There should be a playground around here somewhere. We should meet there at sunset and compare what we've found. But what if someone takes one of us? Hinata pointed out. Nothing will happen, Naruto assured her. Who would want to kidnap us? Naruto had been alone all of his life, and he didn't understand what people were so worried about with kidnappings. He had never had to worry about a thing and he had always run around unattended. Yeah, we'll be fine, Sasuke agreed. What kind of ninja village would this be if their Anbu let us get kidnapped in broad daylight? And so 6 children went running in different directions. Naruto wandered down the road, enjoying himself tremendously. The excitement of the new city was getting to him. The new sights, people, and feelings were enough to make Naruto forget about everything that had happened, but the weight of the scroll tied to his back with some rope that they had found in a corner of the cart brought his mind back. He kept walking and looking around. So far he didn't see anything that looked like a good place to hole up for the night. For a moment when they first got there, Naruto had thoughts about staying there permanently, but walking around Suna told Naruto that there was no way they would be able to stay. They would have to leave as soon as possible. Naruto noticed that he was reaching a break in the wall of buildings, and he walked faster. It was a large patch of sand with some playground equipment scattered around. Some kids were running around with a soccer ball, and they didn't seem to see the newcomer. Naruto was considering continuing on, but his mind was made up for him when one of the kids kicked the ball so that it flew directly at Naruto's head. With a startled yell, Naruto tried to kick it back. He felt his foot connect with the ball, and saw it shoot away from him. Naruto stood in shock that he had been able to kick it away. The last time when Kiba had done that, Naruto had opened his eyes to find himself flat on his back with a spectacular-looking bruise on his forehead. Did just reading a scroll have that much affect? Naruto's triumph was short-lived. He had somehow managed to kick the ball so that it landed on top of a ledge. The group who had been playing with it all surrounded Naruto. Hey, you, the leader said indignantly, what do ya think that you're doing, kicking our ball up there? I didn't do it on purpose, Naruto shot back, it was going to knock my head off. Well, you kicked it, so you have to get it, one of the kids, a girl, said. What, you think I can fly? Naruto muttered, walking over so that he could see the cliff. There was no way that Naruto was going to be able to climb that thing. Naruto stood there, with the group watching him, waiting for some brilliant idea to come to him. There was no way that he was going to get out of this without the ball. Naruto wished that he could do that Kage Bushin thing that he had been reading about so that he could make a ladder of Naruto's to climb, but he didn't think he could. Come on, he growled at the soccer ball, come down. As to be expected, the soccer ball did nothing. But the ground around the soccer ball began to move. A small section of the sand, with the ball, began to float down right in front of Naruto's eyes. It slowly descended until it was caught by a small boy around Naruto's age that he hadn't noticed had walked up. He was shorter than Naruto, with messy dark red hair and shockingly light blue eyes that had black rings around them. He looked at Naruto shyly and held up the ball. Here. Thanks, Naruto said, walking up and taking it with a large grin. The boy's eyes widened in shock that someone would actually come up and take it. He turned around to give the ball back to the others when he noticed that they had all backed up and were looking at the newcomer with terror. "It's Gaara," the leader said, his eyes looking like they were going to pop out of his head. "Run." Naruto stared as the group ran off, and looked at Gaara. He was looking at Naruto like he was preparing himself for something. "What's with them?" Naruto asked, shaking his head, "and what am I supposed to do with this ball?" Gaara blinked once. "There's afraid of me," he mumbled with his head down, "because of my sand." It was Naruto's turn to blink. "That's stupid," he said, losing interest in the other kids and tossing the ball over his shoulder. "What happened to you eyes? Did you get hit by the soccer ball?" "I did once, but it only hit me in the forehead. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, by the way." Gaara looked like he was not at all sure what to do. "My name is Gaara," he told Naruto after a moment where he figured out that Naruto probably wanted to know his name. "I've always had these things around my eyes." "Oh, they're like my whiskers," Naruto said, pointing to them. "I asked Iruka-sensei, he's my sensei back home, what they were, and he said that they were called birthmarks. I've never seen someone else with them before though." Gaara was still half staring at Naruto. Aren't you afraid of me?" he asked tentatively. "No," Naruto replied blankly, "you're not scary." "See, can we be friends?" Gaara shut his eyes tightly, waiting for the refusal he was sure would come. "Yeah," Naruto said, looking confused. No one had ever asked him to be friends before. Mostly he just latched on to people and harassed them to play with him. Sasuke, Hinata, Sai, Neji, and Sakura were the first people that he had ever thought of as friends, but they had never said as much. It was just understood between them, "And I'll show you my other friends, you'll really like them." "Really?" Gaara asked. "Yeah, Sasuke acts like a bit of a jerk, but once you get past that, he's cool. Sai's kind of weird, but I think he's okay, and the more you talk to him, the more normal he gets. Hinata's really shy, but she's nice. Sakura's cute, but she's really shy too. Neji's kind of like Sasuke, but he's more quiet." Gaara listened with interest as Naruto described his friends. He had never spoken to anyone his own age. The only person who had been nice to him before this was Yoshimaru, but this was different. Yoshimaru was always nice to him, but this Naruto was more than nice. He was fun. The blonde man named Yoshimaru watched the Kasage's youngest son and the strange boy. He had never seen him before and his clothes were those of Konoha. Was he a merchant's son? He had received no word about it from the Kasage, and from what he had heard, Konoha was going to be at war with Iwa shortly. What was this kid doing here? Yoshimaru thought about jumping down and breaking things up, but decided against it for now. He would wait until this kid became afraid of Gaara and jump down to play the loving uncle. It would only be a matter of time. In the meantime, perhaps he should look at the letter that Danzo, the new Hokage, had sent to the Kasage. He had asked them to be on the lookout for a group of children, and this might be one of them. Danzo had no intention of looking for the children who had run off even if one of them happened to be his subordinate. They had all run away at the perfect time. Things were not quite as easy as Danzo had thought. People had grown accustomed to peace and didn't want to break it, even to avenge the assassination. The children had been a gift. 3 of them even came from prestigious clans, one was just a local girl, but the other, Uzumaki, was even better than the first 3. To think that the demon vessel had gone missing. It was Prefect. Konoha would be terrified that he was in enemy hands. There was a chance that he would be turned into a weapon against them. Now they had to go to war, if only to get the Uzumaki back. Danzo smiled thinly, as 3 of the root members entered. There was no sign of the children. The only people to leave Konoha that night had been a pair of civilians with that packing company that had been trading with everyone. They had been checked by Uchiha Itachi. While he had no dealings with the prodigy himself, he knew that as an Anbu he would have noticed a small group of children. Vaguely he wondered just how they had managed to do it. Sai would have been no use to him, since the boy knew practically nothing about such things, and he doubted that they would have been smart enough to use the sewers. It didn't matter. He had ordered his forces to kill the children if they found them, and to hide the body of Uzumaki Naruto. There was no way that Danzo would let go of an opportunity that had fallen into his lap at such an opportune moment. Konoha was going to war. Gaara didn't have a clue where Naruto and the others could stay. After Naruto was sure he could trust Gaara, he had asked, but Gaara hadn't known anywhere. Although he lived in Suna, Naruto learned that he was seldom anywhere other than the playground or his house. Naruto was disappointed. He had hoped that meeting someone from the village would help move his search along. It was starting to get dark, and Naruto was beginning to worry about the others. He hoped that nothing had happened to them. He hadn't even thought about it before, but now the idea that they could get kidnapped didn't seem quite as far-fetched as it had earlier. When Naruto saw the form of Hinata walking towards them, he had felt better. Gaara drew back a little, but Naruto called Hinata over. She stopped when she saw Gaara, but continued after a moment's pause. "Who's he?" she asked when she had walked up. "This is Gaara," Naruto introduced. "He lives around here. I was asking him if he knew where we could stay. Did you find anything?" "And no," Hinata sighed, "there was nothing." "Crud," Naruto mumbled. "You could stay with me," Gaara suggested suddenly. "What?" Naruto asked, "But there are 6 of us. Your parents won't be too happy." "I don't live with my father," Gaara said, smiling somewhat. "I live with my uncle, Yoshimaru. I don't think he'll mind." Really?" Further conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Neji, Sai, Sasuke, and Sakura, who had met up with each other earlier. They were somewhat annoyed when Naruto admitted that he had mostly spent his time talking with Gaara instead of looking for a place to stay, but they were a little pacified when Naruto told them about Gaara's offer. There was an unspoken agreement between all of them that they would leave Suna the next day. There was no place for them to live, and their Anbu had seemed slightly suspicious of them. Naruto hadn't noticed, but Sasuke and Neji had. Both of them had learned more from living with their families than Naruto had, and both knew that the ninja shouldn't be quite so active. Something was wrong. Sasuke had a feeling that it was that Danzo creep. He had said that Konoha was going to go to war because of the assassination by rock nins, but he for some reason hadn't thought about how long that would take. Naturally, Suna would be sent a message. Naturally, they would be preparing for war. They would be expected to aid their ally in battle, but the way that they had been looked at had put the boy on edge. Itachi had told him about Suna once. He had said that it was a dangerous place, and that even though the Sand Nin were technically allied with Konoha, Suna had a history of betrayal and tyrant leaders. The current Kazekage had even done something to his own son, but Sasuke didn't know what it was. All he knew was the Itachi had said that it was a horrific thing to do to any human, let alone a child. They were all introduced to Gaara, who seemed to be overwhelmed by all the people talking around him. Naruto was telling the others about what had happened earlier, adding tremendous detail and turning his kick into some great ninja art. The boys, other than Sai, were looking skeptical, and Sakura was looking thoughtful. Hinata and Sai both seemed to believe it. And then the ball was surrounded by all this sand and floated down to Gaara here. Naruto finished. "And?" Sasuke asked. "We talked and stuff." "Dobi. Shut up. Both of you shut up," Neji mumbled. "You're giving everyone a headache." "Actually, I find it entertaining to watch," Sai supplied. "Anyo," Hinata broke in. What about Gaara-kun's offer?" "I'm all for it," Naruto said. Sasuke nodded. "It's our only choice," Sai said with a smile. "I'm okay with it." Sakura smiled at Gaara, who blushed slightly and looked down. "Me too," Neji agreed. Hinata nodded. "I'll tell Yoshimaru when he comes," Gaara said, smiling widely for the first time in his life. There were 6 people who wanted to come to his house. He didn't know what people did at each other's houses, but he had heard that friends would stay over. They seemed to think it was fun, and Gaara wanted to be with his new friends some more. The thought that they weren't from Suna had occurred to him, but the idea that they would have to leave hadn't. For Gaara, it was the first time he had ever been with people who liked him, and the idea that they would leave was not something he could conceive of. "That won't be necessary, Gaara-sama," a soft voice broke everyone from their conversations. Naruto turned to see a pale, blonde man with bandages over some parts of him. He was smiling slightly, but Naruto got a bad feeling from him. Naruto lived on his feelings. He had to. If there was someone who he just felt wasn't right, he avoided them. People who didn't feel right would sometimes give incorrect information, led him to dangerous places, or even, like once, be a spy from another village. Naruto could be fooled. He had been fooled many times before, but he could sense people's intentions better than most people. This man had something wrong with him. It wasn't like Danzo where the aura had been faint, but penetrating and somehow more dangerous than anything he had felt before. This was different. It was more obvious, but there was something sick about it at the same time. Naruto had the impression of poison that had been placed in candy, or an exploding tag that was carefully wrapped up like a present. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the man's polite manner. "Keep your eyes on him," Naruto hissed to Sasuke, who happened to be next to him. "He's bad news." Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "Well, Gaara-sama, I suppose you'd better show your new friends where we live," Yoshimaru said to Gaara. Gaara's house was huge. Even Sasuke, Neji, and Hinata, who had lived in large, expensive places all their lives, stared around in an impressed sort of way when they first walked in. They were led to what was probably Gaara's room. It was littered with toys and games, but there was no bed. A small table stood in a corner of the room with only a picture of a young smiling woman on it who looked a lot like Yoshimaru. "Who's this?" Naruto had asked when he had seen it. "My mother," Gaara told him. "Where is she?" Sakura had asked curiously. "Dead." "Oh. Neji-Nisan and my mother are dead too," Hinata supplied, probably to make Gaara feel a little better. They had spent about an hour teaching Gaara how to play some of the games in the room. Gaara didn't seem to know how to play anything. He had toys and games, but the only thing he actually seemed to play with was the teddy bear that he constantly held. He didn't really seem to play with that either, he simply held it. Naruto knew a lot of games that he had learned from random children or made up himself. Sai only knew games that were more like training exercises than anything else. Sasuke knew most solitary games, but didn't seem to play in a group much. Neji and Hinata knew the rules for plenty of games, but neither of them seemed to play them very much. By the time Yoshimaru had appeared with dinner, an innocent-looking rice dish that was so hot that the boys began a new game of how many grains they could eat without tears coming out of their eyes, Gaara had become the seventh member of their group. He was quiet, and always seemed worried that if he said something wrong, they might not like him anymore, and he was surprisingly even-tempered and passive. The boys were used to roughhousing a little, and got the surprise of their lives when Naruto jumped Gaara during a game. Immediately, sand shot up around Gaara and spiked out. Naruto was thrown back and had the wind knocked out of him. When he finally got his breath back, Gaara was apologizing over and over again, and Sasuke and Neji were trying to get him to stop apologizing and tell them how he did that technique. "That was really painful, but really cool," Naruto said as he sat up. "You have got to teach me how to do it." I don't know how I do it," Gaara whispered, "I just do." Naruto assumed that he was talking about a bloodline limit. He didn't know much about them, but he had heard that they could do things that no one else could. "Crud," he muttered. As time went on, one by one, the group began to fall asleep. Each time that happened, Yoshimaru would appear out of nowhere, and take them out of the room. Naruto, the last one awake, assumed that it was to some bedroom, so when he found that he had been lying in the same spot for about a half hour, too tired to move, but not quite asleep, he only felt slight discomfort at being moved. "What's wrong with him, Yoshimaru?" Gaara was asking. "Most people need to sleep, Gaara-sama," Yoshimaru replied, "he's just tired. Your friend will be fine in the morning." "Oh," Gaara mumbled, "good night." "Good night, Gaara-sama." Naruto felt himself being taken down a flight of stairs. The grip was a bit harder than he would have liked, and he squirmed a little to show it. The grip tightened around him, making it hard for Naruto to breathe. "You really brought this on yourself," Yoshimaru whispered harshly. "If you had run off like a good little brat, you might have been alive tomorrow, but I doubt it. You see, the new Hokage sent us a message to keep an eye out for you. It would be inconvenient for you to turn up when you're supposed to be kidnapped or dead. I'm not supposed to kill any of you, but if you give me any trouble, the case cage will have to settle for your body." Naruto was starting to struggle wildly, kicking out and failing around to get out of the vice grip Yoshimaru had him in. He looked around frantically for a way to get away from him. He was in a small room with no windows or furniture. Tied up and arranged in a neat row were Sasuke, Neji, Hinata, Sai, and Sakura. All of them were gagged and Neji had blood running down the side of his head, where Yoshimaru had had to knock him out. He seemed conscious again and was glaring hatefully at the man. Naruto started to feel his head getting light, and his awareness ebbing. The whole scene was beginning to take on a dreamlike quality, and his struggles were becoming feebler. A cloudy realization came to him: he was dying. This made him struggle a little harder. The hand over his mouth moved a little, and on instinct, Naruto bit down hard. He was rewarded instantly, by the taste of blood and being let go with a sharp cry. Naruto didn't know what was happening. It was almost like someone else was controlling his motions. Instead of falling to his hands and knees and gasping for breath, he had somehow managed to twist in such a way where he landed on his feet with his hands together in the form that the scroll he was carrying recommended. Kage Bushin no Justu. The words seemed to come from far away. 1.5 Narutos appeared in a cloud of smoke. The half was the legs and lower body that continued to emanate smoke. Naruto had jumped onto Yoshimaru's leg and had sunk his teeth into him again. The other Naruto was hastily untying the others, and the half, which didn't seem to need eyes, was trying to kick Yoshimaru in any possible place. Sasuke was the first up. He quickly started to form a set of seals that was the Uchiha family signature move. Kaden, Gukaku no Jutsu, Sasuke screamed and breathed out. A small tongue of flame that probably couldn't have done much more than light a candle came out of his mouth aimed at the seat of Yoshimaru's pants. Sakura had attached herself to Yoshimaru's other leg and was trying to pound her fists into his leg, but hadn't done much. Sai had taken out a kunai from somewhere and picked his finger. Using his own blood he drew something that looked like a cross between a lion, a dog, and a fish. The thing came to life, but did little other than cause more noise and confusion. Neji and Hinata were both punching and kicking as much as possible, but the blows were badly aimed, and hit Naruto and Sakura as much as Yoshimaru. A joint bite from Naruto and punch from Neji caused Yoshimaru to stumble over Sai's lion dog fish thing and fall flat on his back. At the moment the door that Yoshimaru had closed and locked was forced open with sand, and the form of Gaara stood in the doorway. "Uncle Yoshimaru, what's?" The question died on his lips when he saw his uncle's face twisted with rage and hatred at the sight of him. "Well, I suppose there's no hope for it," he snarled. "This is the end." "Get away from him," Hinata screamed. Naruto looked over to her, and noticed for the first time that there was something weird with her eyes. They were glowing white-blue in the center. But it wasn't the time to ask questions. Naruto and Sakura scrambled away from him as the exploding tags attached to his body went off. It seemed for a moment like everything was going in slow motion. Naruto watched the blast coming at him and even had the time to wonder whether anyone would find their blackened bodies when he was suddenly looking at a wall of solid sand. There was a deafening blast from outside the sand and the ground shook under him. Naruto didn't have the sense to look around to see if the others were alright until the sand slowly descended and allowed him to see the burnt remains of Gaara's house. Gaara was standing, looking shocked, staring at the place where Yoshimaru had been. Tears were slowly coursing down his face. Suddenly, his legs gave out and he collapsed to his hands and knees, sobbing quietly. Naruto didn't really notice what he was doing, but he saw the others were doing the same thing. Slowly, they congregated around him. Hinata had placed a hand on his shoulder. Neji and sat down next to him. Slowly, Gaara was surrounded by frightened children who were trying to give comfort, but had no idea how to give it. Naruto had no idea how long they stayed like that, but after some time, Gaara's crying had stopped. "We need to get out of here," Sai whispered. Naruto wanted to kill him. Gaara jerked at that statement and stared around with wide, frightened eyes. "Don't leave me alone," he pleaded. Madness was glinted on the edge of his eyes. One more push would send his already strained mind over the edge. "You're coming with us," Naruto said forcefully. "You're going to come with us, and we're all gonna find a place to stay together." "I am," Gaara said blankly. "Yes," Sai said, catching onto what he thought was Naruto's idea. Gaara was very powerful, and they needed as many powerful friends as they could get. "Everything will be alright." Sakura nodded. "We're all going to be a family," she promised. "A family?" Sasuke asked her, surprised. Something glinted in her eyes. "Yeah, a family," she said, louder and more forcefully than she had ever said anything in her life. "Ya got a problem?" Sasuke's eyes widened. For some reason Sakura's sudden mood swing scared him. He nodded quickly. "I'd like that," Gaara whispered. "I've never had a family." "Here," Neji said, handing him one of the 2 scrolls that he, as the eldest, had been carrying. "You can start reading this." Gaara slowly stood up and took the scroll. He purposely turned his back on the body of his traitorous uncle and to his new family as the stars began to go out and the sky began to show the signs of the new dawn. A blast of wind and sand surrounded 7 figures. When the Anbu arrived, there wasn't a sign of life. Just a little sand that had been picked up by the wind. Chapter 3, Part 1, Winter. It had been 2 months since Gaara had joined them. Gaara's ability to control sand had proved useful. He had teleported them outside Suna the first night, and he could sense where to find water. The frequent sandstorms that raged across the desert ended up being much less of a problem than they should have been. Gaara didn't want his new family to be hurt, and the sand always did what Gaara told it. Naruto learned many interesting things about Gaara. The most interesting was that the boy was incapable of sleeping. When he asked Gaara why, Gaara had said that the monster would eat his mind if he slept. Naruto had no idea what that meant, but he went along with it. Gaara's hold on sanity was fragile at best, and while he was getting better, he was extremely attached to all of them, and part of Naruto had a vague fear that if someone said something wrong, even as a joke, Gaara would crack. Thankfully, the others seemed to have guessed that too. Gaara received special treatment, even from the sarcastic Neji, blunt Sasuke, and the brutally honest Sai. Sai hadn't seemed to have discovered the idea of lying. If he was asked something, he would respond with the complete truth, no matter how rude it was. In fact, Sai was developing the ability to offend anyone. He seemed to think it was funny. He was slowly becoming more open, if only to the others. To everyone else he displayed the same fake smile that hid his utter lack of emotion towards them, but to Naruto, Gaara, Neji, Sasuke, Sakura, and Hinata he was slowly beginning to develop emotions. His smiles were becoming genuine, and he seemed to be content with them. Naruto had the strange feeling that he reminded Sai of someone who he never mentioned. Hinata was slowly losing her stutter. She still sometimes would if she was upset or shocked, but on the whole, the contact with the others was good for her. She still called Neji, Neji Nisan, and Neji had started to call her Amotu. She was slowly changing from a shy, timid girl into a calm girl with an iron will. Sakura had become more outspoken during the 2 months. She acted quiet and pleasant most of the time, but every so often, she would act in a way that was completely different from her usual self. This, Dark Sakura, as Sasuke called her, seemed very violent, and had no problem with getting in someone's face and yelling. Sasuke had mellowed slightly. He didn't act like everyone was beneath him somehow, and he didn't challenge Naruto every time he said something. Sasuke had gained something like a fear of Dark Sakura, and they found out quickly that Sasuke had an obsession with tomatoes. Neji had softened a little. He was starting to show the signs of becoming overprotective towards Hinata, and something that had always seemed tight about him had loosened. He smiled every so often and didn't seem so ready to sneer at everything that was said. Somehow Naruto had become the unofficial leader of the group. He had stopped shouting all the time, but his habit of smiling, and seemingly ever-present good mood had not faded. It might have been his cheerfulness, combined with his endurance, that made him leader. They sadly weren't able to use Gaara's ability once they left the desert. Gaara didn't seem to have that much control over his ability, and the sand obeyed his desires rather than his commands. After they got out of the desert they had to travel by foot. Since most of them had had some ninja training, they were able to find food and water. Shelter was more difficult. Normally, they were forced to sleep in the open. The incident in Suna had made them all a little paranoid, and they did their best to sleep under some kind of cover. Even if it was just some bushes, they would stay under them. They normally would stop about an hour before nightfall to work on their scrolls. They also avoided all hidden villages or places where ninja were known to frequent. This limited them to small villages mostly. They would stay in a village for about a week or so, mostly stealing food to live. Sasuke's money had long since run out, and after they would disappear. Naruto sometimes wondered why no one ever pursued them, but dismissed it as due to their abilities of sneaking away. None of them ever guessed that it was because the villagers pitied them, and took them for orphans who had been forced to live on their own. The children never stole money, and the food they stole was cheap, so the villagers ignored them, and before they were a true nuisance, they vanished and were on the road again. This night was one of the better ones, even though it was raining. They had managed to find a small cave, and Sasuke had lit a fire for them. He still couldn't produce anything that could do much other than light a fire. The light from it gave them more time than usual to read. Normally, they didn't light fires, since they were easy to see from a distance in the open, but when they had some kind of shelter, they would. It was raining more often than not now. Sai said that it had to do with the fact that they were in water country. He told them that since it was fall now, they had better be preparing for winter. Gaara looked somewhat horrified when they had described winter to him. Coming from Suna, he had never had to worry about cold before. The rest had looked at each other and wondered the same thing. Will we live to see spring? They were all in various stages of filth. Their hair was matted, faces dirty, clothes ripped and torn in various places, and there was no hope of stealing anything new. They didn't have any shoes anymore, and Sai was missing the lower half of his shirt because he had had to use it to bandage a wound around his arm. We should try to find a warm place to stay for the winter, Neji said thoughtfully. Where? Sasuke sighed. We can't go back to Suna, and even if we could, I don't think we'd make it before the first snowfall. We could try one of the closer countries, suggested Hinata. There's nowhere warm and close enough for us to travel, even if we were lucky enough to manage to stow away again, Sai told them. Maybe we'll find something in the next village, Naruto said. We can't do anything right now, so let's train. Each of them had a scroll that they were trying to learn, and all of them were learning just how difficult it was to learn from a scroll and not a teacher. While there were pictures of the seals, Naruto actually missed Iruka's long dull lectures. Somehow everything had seemed so much simpler back home. Neji had already buried himself in his scroll about the special techniques of the Hyuga clan. He had been reading hard ever since they had left Suna. He seemed to be looking for something in particular. Every so often he would look over at his cousin with a puzzled expression. When Naruto had asked him what was up, Neji had shook his head and said nothing. He seemed absorbed in something towards the back of the scroll. Sai had recently stolen a blank scroll, some ink, and a paintbrush. He was reading his scroll, and attempting to bring his drawings to life. Some came out, some didn't. Hinata was practicing the forms of the gentle fist fighting style. She didn't seem to have any natural talent for it, but she was working hard to get past that. She carefully moved through every step and attack in slow motion, but she still couldn't summon up the chakra necessary. Unlike Neji, whose talent was obvious, Hinata was going to have to learn the hard way. Naruto was still working on Kage Bushin. He was now able to make 5 clones before he started to make halves. He was amazed by how little it tired him out. According to his scroll, it was a very difficult technique that even Jonin had trouble with. Sasuke was working the scroll that his brother had given him. He still couldn't produce much more than a little tongue of flame, but he was able to do it every single time, and it was slowly getting bigger. Sakura had learned very quickly that she had surprising chakra control, but not a whole lot of chakra itself. She would have to work on that as she grew older, but right now, she was working on trying to channel it right. Emotu, Neji said suddenly, would you please activate the Byakugan for me? Why? Hinata asked. You activated yours long before I did. Yes, but there is something I want to see. Alright, Hinata said in his slight confusion, falling back on her old stutter, Byakugan. Naruto had seen Neji activate the Byakugan before, and knew what it looked like. There were no veins coming out of Hinata's head, nor did it seem like her body was somehow stressed from using it. Her eyes were the only things that were different. They were glowing blue-white at the center. I thought so, Neji said with a triumphant smirk at his own reasoning. What is it? Naruto asked curiously. I've never heard of a Byakugan like that, Sai said, moving closer. Hinata has the Tenshi Byakugan, Neji told them. According to my scroll, it's a secret limit that can't be awoken easily. This scroll doubts that it even exists. What is it? Sasuke repeated Naruto. Didn't the Hokage mention that before? Sakura trailed off. Both the Sharingan and the Byakugan have another limit attached to them. According to legend, when Amaterasu and her brother Susanoo fought for supremacy, they held a contest of who could give the best gift to a warrior. Both agreed that the gift would be something that everyone of the bloodline would carry, and the gift would manifest itself in the eyes. Susanoo, who valued raw power and the ability to kill anyone who was in his way, created the Sharingan to be the base of his gift, but to those who would go so far as to kill their best friend for power, he bestowed a greater gift, the Mangekyo Sharingan. It had far greater abilities, but a single weakness. Because of the weakness of the human body, the bearer of the Mangekyo Sharingan would eventually go blind. Because of the Mangekyo Sharingan, the Uchiha clan was known as cursed. Amaterasu, who valued wisdom and knowledge more than power, created the Byakugan as her basic gift. It could be used in battle, and the gentle fist style was created for that, but the true purpose of the Byakugan was to be able to see everything. However, those who desired power for a reason that Amaterasu herself would be pleased with were granted a blessing, the Tenshi Byakugan. It had a different purpose than the normal Byakugan. It was made to be used to see and manipulate the charka of both the user and their opponent, and it actually puts less strain on the body than the original Byakugan. Also, it is the natural enemy of the Mangekyo Sharingan, since it is impossible to trap one who bears it in a genjutsu. The last thing about it is that it allows the bearer to see and remove seals. The Hyuga family's association with the divine is because of the Tenshi Byakugan. What do you mean, the Uchiha clan is cursed? Sasuke said angrily. I didn't say they were cursed, Neji corrected, I said that they reputed to be cursed. Before Konoha, no one wanted anything to do with your family. Now they are extremely respected, but it's a dubious respect among ninja. Why? Sakura asked curiously, I didn't see that at the academy. That's because most people at your academy will never be actual ninja, Sai told her, they're just civilians, and the civilians have always worshipped the clans with Kekkei Genkei. The other ninja have always feared them a little, particularly since the clans are very secretive and strict. They also have a long history of being jerks, Naruto cut in. Huh, Gaara asked. My scroll says that the founder of the Uchiha clan, Uchiha Madara, tried to kill the first Hokage because they disagreed about how Konoha should be run. He was defeated, but he swore to come back. It has his words too. I shall return when you fools don't expect it, and I will always be near Konoha, waiting for those who have the potential to join me. They will join, whether they will it or not, for I, who possess the perfect Sharingan, am capable of all things. That's rather disturbing, Sai said. What does he mean by capable of all things? Sasuke asked. I don't know, Naruto said, this scroll doesn't have much about it. It just talked about it for about a paragraph and went on. Sasuke was quiet and seemed to have retreated into his own thoughts. There was an awkward silence, until Naruto turned to Hinata, who still had the Tenshi Byakugan activated. That's really cool, Hinata, he told her, I bet you'll get really super strong. It's true too, at least about the stress, Hinata said, when I activated the normal Byakugan, it always felt like I was straining myself, but this feels really easy. She looked at Naruto and Gaara strangely for a moment, you both have funny seals on you. Gaara didn't look surprised. Naruto looked confused. That keeps the monster inside me, Gaara said matter-of-factly, it wants to get out, so I can't sleep. I don't have a seal, do I? Naruto asked. Yes, it's kinda like Gaara-kun's, but it's different. Both of them are keeping something in them, but I can't really see it, Hinata told them. Maybe Naruto-kun's is keeping a Kekkei Genkei in his, Sakura suggested. That's impossible, Sai said, shaking his head. Well, whatever's in there, Neji said, giving Naruto an odd look, I guess we'll find out one day. Gaara was not the only one who couldn't sleep that night. Sasuke was curled up and his eyes were closed, but sleep didn't come. His mind continued to linger on the words of Uchiha Madara. Was the Uchiha clan truly cursed? He had always been told that the Uchiha were superior to everyone. He had always somehow believed that because of his bloodline he was assured to be great. Suddenly, everything he had been taught was said to be a lie. The Sharingan was a curse, a blot of the face of the earth. It was made only for power, and for those who couldn't care less about anything but power. Was that really true? Was the Mangekyo Sharingan the real secret limit? Did you really have to kill your best friend to get it? Sasuke turned over and received a kick from Neji. Someone was going to murder that guy one day. Were the Uchiha cursed? Was it impossible to use the Sharingan for anything good? The Sharingan was power, Sasuke reasoned. Power was neither good or evil, it simply was. If the Mangekyo Sharingan existed, then that was evil, since was only obtained through cold-blooded murder. The Sharingan was awakened in battle, when the user's life was in danger. It was nothing or less more than a weapon, but, an unpleasant voice in him reminded, weapons could be used to defend, or to murder, but in the end their purpose was the same. The Sharingan was made to kill. Was he cursed? Would he become like his father, like the elders of the clan, no matter what he did? Sasuke didn't know it, but he was taking the first step towards a future decision. The cold air actually hurt as Naruto breathed too fast. His feet bare pounded the snow-covered ground, and occasionally he skidded a little on the ice that covered parts of the street. Naruto's breath hung in the fringed air as he breathed, and mentally, he was annoyed that he lost the heat every time he breathed. "Get back here," the angry voice of the vendor reached his ears. "Yeah," Naruto thought savagely, "like I'm going to stop and let you beat the snot out of me." The 2 large loaves of bread were awkward to carry, and in addition to the scroll tied to his back, he was having trouble moving with the same agility as usual. Why couldn't the man have chased after one of the Kage Bushin? The group had settled in a village near the border of water country and closer to Kurigakure than Sai would have liked. They tried to move from village to village as much as they could, but things had gotten harder as the weather grew colder. Less people traveled in the winter, and those that did usually didn't have convenient places to stow away. This village wasn't quite so pleasant about their being there as others had been. They had plenty of starving children running around without 7 more to add to the problem. They probably would have run them out of town, if they could have caught them. Thankfully, though learning their jutsus and since they had started sparring with each other to stay warm, they were too good at running away to be caught. There were no ninja in that village. If there had been, all of them would have been caught. Sai said that it had to do with the fact that Kurigakure and the water daimyo were having some sort of disagreement, and both fractions were very distrustful of one another. Naruto turned a tight corner and made another Kage Bushin to look like it was going straight. Hopefully, the man would chase the clone for a while. He didn't have the usual backup if something went wrong. It seemed that everyone but Gaara and him were sick. It was strange, since Gaara had never been exposed to cold air like this before, but he didn't show any signs of illness. The others were bad and getting worse. Sasuke and Hinata both had high fevers. Sakura complained that she felt like there was a knife in her throat. Sai could barely keep any food down. Neji was showing signs of the chicken pox. Naruto and Gaara took turns sneaking from the alleys that they had made their hiding place and stealing food or rummaging through trash. The other would stay where they were hidden and try to keep Sasuke's fire from going out. Naruto wondered sometimes if they would all live through the winter. He gritted his teeth at the thought and ran faster. Finally, he made it to a small alley that was almost invisible because of the buildings and the trash around it. He paused for a moment, but didn't hear his pursuer's footsteps anywhere. Apparently he had gone after the Kage Bushin, which would probably disappear after making some form of hostile gesture at the vendor. Naruto sighed in relief and darted down the alley. There was a large heap of snow and trash in one corner that hid the little bubble of sand that Gaara had managed to make for them. Naruto moved a rotting sofa cushion to show a hole large enough for him to crawl through. Trying not to get the loaves any more dirty than necessary, Naruto crawled through and reached out to put the cushion back. Inside, it was a small dome that was lit only by the fire in the center of the room. Around the fire, everyone lay wrapped in ratty, ragged-looking blankets. Gaara was the only one who looked awake. He had a small pile of garbage net to him that looked flammable which he would throw into the fire when he thought it got too low. Since Gaara liked heat, it was a cheerful blaze. It had been a real problem figuring out just how to get a fire in there. The first time that they had tried to light a fire since it had created a ton of smoke and forced Gaara to make a hole in the roof so that they could breathe. Then there had been the problem of the hole letting too much cold air in. It was hard, since if there wasn't enough of a chimney, the smoke would suffocate them, but if it was too large, they would get even sicker. Gaara finally managed a hole that would let enough smoke out to be livable and small enough not to let too much cold air in. "How are they?" Naruto asked. "Neji feels warm now, and Sai hasn't woken up," Gaara mumbled. Naruto sighed and showed him the 2 loaves of bread. "I got food," he said simply. Naruto went around to everyone, shaking them awake and giving them a piece of bread. "I'm so cold," moaned Sasuke when Naruto woke him. Naruto had moved him closer to the fire and given him the bread. Sai blearily looked around and accepted the bread without saying anything. "Are we going to die?" Hinata asked calmly. "No," Naruto assured them, "we're all going to make it through the winter. You're going to get better. No matter what, we're all going to make it through the winter together." They were quiet as they ate their bread, mostly because they were too weak to talk and eat at the same time. Naruto tried to sound cheerful as he talked to them all, only Gaara really joined in. They others appreciated the mindless chatter, and Naruto knew it. Naruto didn't eat his piece of bread. He was too worried and too upset. He wanted to believe the words he had just said, but so far, from the look of things, Naruto and Gaara were going to be the only ones who saw spring. I'm going to get some more firewood, Naruto said, getting up and putting the piece of bread in his pocket. Gaara, can you stay here? Gaara nodded. They called the garbage that they fed the fire with firewood, even though it was anything but. Mostly it was just pieces of paper. Naruto crawled out the hole and went back into the cold evening. It was rapidly getting dark, and Naruto hugged himself as he walked. What would happen if he or Gaara got sick? How would they get food? Naruto had never been rich. There was a good reason why he ate so much ramen. It was the cheapest food in existence that had some flavor to it. Sometimes he would spend too much money and have to miss quite a few meals. He was no stranger to hunger, but this was different. He had always known that if he really needed something he could go to the old man. Now, all his thoughts were on their next meal, and he had no idea when he would eat again. Naruto wasn't really paying attention to where he was going, and didn't even notice the falling snow. He was too busy thinking about what to do. He didn't notice the large dog sleeping in part of the alley until he had already stepped on it. There was an angry yelp of pain and Naruto found himself staring at an impressive-looking set of very sharp teeth. Naruto did the only thing that came to his mind at that moment. He ran like he had never run before with the dog hot on his tail. Kage Bushin didn't work on dogs since the false Narutos didn't smell, so Naruto was unable to use his usual means of escape. When he was little he had watched a dog chasing a cat and noticed how the dog couldn't catch it because of the sharp turns that it would make. Now he was the one trying to make sharp turns. Already Naruto was starting to feel tired, and his breath was starting to burn in his lungs. He was vaguely aware that the dog was beginning to gain on him, and that his legs were feeling heavy. He dashed past what might have been another person and darted into a side alley. There was a startled yelp, and Naruto turned around in time to see the dog slide past the alley entrance on a sheet of ice that hadn't been there before. Naruto stood in shock for a moment, catching his breath, when he noticed that someone was running towards him. It was a boy about 3 years older than him. He was just as filthy, hungry-looking, and cold as Naruto and the rest. His dark hair was matted and stuck out at odd angles. He was wearing a baggy, oversized white shirt that was in far better shape than his, with a blank collar around his neck. "Are you alright?" he asked, leaning over to check Naruto. "Yeah," he said with a grin, "that thing nearly had me though. Did you see how that dog got on that ice? I didn't see any ice before. What happened?" The boy started, "I guess you were just lucky. It was there, but somehow you didn't trip." "Well, at least that's lucky," Naruto sighed. "Oh, I'm Uzumaki Naruto." "I'm Akiyama Haku," Haku said politely. "What were you doing out here, Naruto-kun?" "I'm looking for stuff to put in a fire," Naruto told him. "You see, my friend made a fire, but we have to make sure it won't go out, since he might not be able to make another one." "You're with friends?" Haku asked. He was surprised. He would have thought Naruto would have been all alone. A twinge of disappointment hit him. He had vaguely been hoping to help out this kid, but once again, his existence wasn't necessary. "Yeah," Naruto trailed off and then looked up. "Do you know any doctors?" Haku blinked at the question and shook his head. "Oh," Naruto sounded a bit disappointed. "Why?" My friends need help," Naruto told him quickly after pausing for a moment and deciding that he needed to talk to someone. "They're sick, and I think they might die. Only me and one other person are healthy, and it keeps getting colder." "Can I see your friends?" Haku asked. "I know a little about medicine." He seemed surprisingly eager to help out. "Really?" Naruto looked hopefully up at him. "Yes," Haku nodded, "my mother taught me." He trailed off and looked at the ground, but Naruto had already grabbed his arm and was proceeding to lead him to their little hut. Haku found himself being dragged along by Naruto. He didn't have any real objection to going. After all, he had been the one to involve himself by making that ice. He had wanted to have someone, anyone, to talk to. Naruto led Haku to a small mound of garbage, only to show him the hole hidden behind the cushion. Haku had to admit that for a group that couldn't be older than 7, this was a very impressive feat. He hadn't thought of it, but when he noticed the sand, he knew that it wouldn't have mattered if he did. He looked around at the huddled forms of the other children and the red-haired boy who was the only one awake. "This is Haku, Gaara, he says he knows stuff about medicine," Naruto told him. "This is Gaara, Haku." Gaara smiled a little, but his eyes fell back on the sleeping figures of the others. "I got some firewood too," Naruto said. "How are they?" "Sakura woke up," Gaara told him. "She got upset that you went out again. She thinks you're going to get sick too." "Nah, no sickness would dare attack the great Uzumaki Naruto," Naruto said, sounding more confident than he looked. Haku ignored the boasting, and came to the conclusion that Naruto was trying to keep his friend's spirits up. Things looked pretty bad for this little group. It was strange, he thought, how there were so many of them. Normally, street children didn't team up like this. They would sometimes make temporary alliances, but they fought over every scrap of food that they got their hands on. Haku had tried on several occasions to team up with other kids who lived like him, but it had never worked. Naruto pointed at the sleeping forms of the other children. "Is there a way we can help?" Naruto asked him. Haku leaned over all of them in turn. Remembering what his mother told him, he put a hand on each of their foreheads in turn, felt Sakura's throat for swollen glands, and tried to get Sai to stay away long enough to ask him how he felt. "They're almost at a point where the only thing that would help is hospitalization," Haku told him. "They need medical herbs. Badly." "Where are some?" Naruto asked. "Hospital," Gaara said suddenly. "My sister once got really sick and they had to get special herbs from the hospital greenhouse to help her." Naruto and Haku looked at Gaara and at each other. "There's a hospital near that marketplace. I bet it has some," Naruto exclaimed and turned to Haku. "Gaara, you could use your sand to help Haku and I up, and we could steal the herbs." Naruto paused and looked at Haku a little embarrassed. "That is, if you want to help us." "I'll help," Haku told him. "I know the herbs that would work best. I think that they could have them, they're not that rare." Haku was surprised that things were moving so fast, but he knew just why he was helping them out. For the first time since his mother's murder, he had seen people who were like him. Each and every one of them had looked at him, and he had seen that they all had the same eyes as his. Eyes that were determined to prove their existence, and force others to acknowledge it. It was late by the time that the three made it to the hospital. They had to make sure that the fire had enough fuel to burn for an hour or so while they were gone, and they had managed to get lost quite a few times. None of them were that familiar with the town, so occasionally, a wrong turn was taken. Naruto barely had any sense of direction. Haku and Gaara fared slightly better, but they would sometimes get confused by the side alleys. The other problem was that there were a few mist nin that sometimes patrolled at night, and while they wouldn't really catch the notice of them, they were afraid of being seen and later associated with the soon-to-be robbery. There were several near misses, and once, when a particularly fearsome-looking ninja with a large sword and most of his face covered was walking past the alley they were hiding in, Haku took a step back that nearly sent him crashing into a garbage can. Naruto stared up at the hospital, praying that whatever medical herbs were needed to help his friends were there. "Okay, Gaara, do you think you can do it?" Naruto asked. Naruto had explained to Haku on the way that Gaara could manipulate sand. Haku had been quiet, almost like he was thinking of something. Naruto hoped that Haku wasn't going to show any fear of him. Gaara had improved considerably over the few months. He didn't seem quite so afraid that at one misstep they would all hate him. He also seemed to be more comfortable with his control over sand. Because he was with people who didn't fear him, he started to try to use the sand at will. He was slowly getting better and better. Gaara had started to use the sand to pick things up a while ago, but he had never tried to do that to a person before tonight. "I think so," Gaara said. "If anything goes wrong, I should have time to put you back down." "Let's hope so," Haku found himself saying. "Yeah," Naruto nodded. "Gaara, promise me something." "What?" "If there's a chance that you're losing control, put us down." Gaara, if anything, looked more nervous at that request. "I'll try," he mumbled. "Okay," Naruto said, "let's go." Gaara closed his eyes and concentrated. Thankfully, they had learned that to Gaara's ability, all dirt was sand. There was plenty of dirt around this village, so Gaara didn't have to strain too much as he began to make the dirt around Naruto and Haku's feet congeal around their feet and slowly lift them up. Naruto felt nervous and refused to look down as the ground slowly grew further and further away from him. He had the feeling that if he did look, he would probably start begging Gaara to put him back down. The hospital roof grew closer and closer. Just to keep his mind off of the thought of the ground and just how much it would hurt to fall from that height, he tried to remember what Haku had told him. The hospital would have the entrance to the greenhouse on the first floor somewhere. Since they were going through the roof, they were going to have go down 3 floors to get to it, and then go back up 3 floors just to get back to Gaara. The fact that they were most likely going to be caught hadn't occurred to Naruto. Naruto and Haku jumped off at the side of the roof sighting there. Naruto stood at the edge and gave Gaara the thumbs up to show that they were okay. He turned around and looked for any obvious way they could get in. There was no door on the roof, or anything else that was large enough for an adult to get in or out. There were some small pipes jetting out at odd angles, and a heating vent, but nothing that would be easy. Naruto had half been expecting a door of some kind that they would be able to use, but since there wasn't one, he would have to think of another way. What about the vent? Haku suggested, pointing at it. It looks big enough for the 2 of us to go though. Yeah, that'll work, Naruto said, nodding. Okay, I'll help you up, and go in after you. Naruto nodded and was supported by Haku as he tried to remove the vent cover. It was screwed tight and no effort of his was able to move it at all. After almost 15 minutes, Naruto paused to catch his breath and stare at his raw, red hands. Haku seemed to be alright supporting him, at least he hadn't said anything yet, but he did twitch as he rested. Sorry, Naruto told him, thinking that he was tired and a little irritated that he had to carry him. I needed a break. I can go again now. He was shocked when with one tug, the cover came off neatly, but he wasn't too shocked to notice that the inside had frozen and had somehow actually broken the screws. He was somehow reminded of the dog that had been chasing him and how it had suddenly tripped on ice that had just appeared. Looks like there's a Yuki Onna who likes me, Naruto told Haku, grinning. Haku gave him a nervous smile and whispered for him to go on. Naruto crawled through the entrance and began to make his way down the passage. It was pitch black in there, and the metal was so cold that it almost burned his hands at first. Naruto had to remind himself over and over again that if he didn't do this, Sasuke, Sakura, Hinata, Neji, and Sai would all die. The first shock was when the tunnel suddenly turned into a sharp drop. He slid down for about 5 feet and about a second later heard the surprised gasp of Haku doing the same. The tunnel leveled off a little and turned into a slide for a while. By the time it had become straight, Naruto had no idea just how far down he had gone, but the force that Haku bumped into him showed that it had been a shorter time than he had thought. Are you okay? Naruto whispered into the darkness. Yes, Haku's voice replied from behind him. The drop scared me a bit though. Naruto crawled towards a spot where the darkness of the tunnel didn't seem quite so thick. Only after reaching it and staring at the horizontal slits for a while did he realize that he was inside the air vent looking in at a dark room. He couldn't see anything in it other than the drawn curtains and the forms of a bed and some equipment. It looked completely deserted. Naruto started to push as hard as he could, but he was startled when the cover came off with a loud pop. Yada, Naruto whispered. Both boys crawled out slowly, not thinking that if there had been anyone nearby, the sound of the cover coming off would have gotten their attention. What are you doing? A soft, unemotional voice said. Naruto and Haku jumped and whirled around. They couldn't quite see the person in the faint light of the room, but they could tell that whoever it was a tall, slender person dressed in something that looked like a baggy shirt that covered their hands. From the voice, Naruto guessed that the person was a girl. Cleaning the air ducts, Naruto said. The second that they were out of his mouth, he knew the words sounded stupid. Haku must have been thinking something similar, because he looked very strangely at Naruto. The truth, the person said. For the first time in his life, Naruto had killing intent. It was a sickening feeling that hung in the air and penetrated everything. Naruto didn't really understand what it was, but he took an unconscious step back, Haku doing the same. Haku began in a defeated voice. The tone sent a feeling of rage into Naruto. He had seen the murder of the Hokage, he had almost been killed by a sand nin, and he had been, almost single-handedly, keeping 5 people alive for 2 weeks. There was no way that he was going to cower before anyone, let alone some mysterious woman who that didn't know anything about. We're gonna get medicine for our friends, Naruto said angrily, and you're not gonna stop me. The woman was silent for a moment, but the oppressive feeling in the air died away. Your friends, what are they to you? The woman asked. Everything, Naruto hissed, they're the people who acknowledged my existence. Haku once again looked at Naruto strangely, this time it was a look of understanding, and a little jealousy. There was another silence after. The person moved away, turning their back toward